My name is Natalie. I live with my 5-year-old son Ethan, just the two of us. It's been 3 years since the divorce, and I've kept my distance from my ex-husband Marcus. That relationship is over. I don't want anything to do with him anymore. That's what I kept telling myself as I rushed through my days, juggling work and raising my son. I'd wake up at 6 every morning to make Ethan's breakfast. Toast with scrambled eggs and orange juice. My son would sit at the table rubbing his sleepy eyes. As I smoothed his hair, I'd feel a small sense of fulfillment that another day was beginning. Yes, it was hectic. Yes, it was hard. But we were building a peaceful life together. 6 months ago, a small change came into my life. I met a man named Ryan, someone my mother had introduced me to. He was an IT consultant, polite and kind. Best of all, he made a real effort with Ethan. He'd kick a soccer ball around with him, read him picture books, and carry my son on his shoulders through the park. He looked like a real father. Like a daddy. When Ethan said that, my heart warmed. My son was growing up without knowing a father's love. Marcus paid child support, sure, but he hardly ever came to visit. So Ryan's presence seemed like a new hope for both of us. The word remarriage was starting to form, vaguely, in my mind. One Saturday morning, a moving truck pulled up at the empty house next door. The house had been vacant for a long time, so I was a little excited about having new neighbors. Around noon, I went over with a homemade apple pie to say hello. An elegant elderly woman answered the door. "Hello. I'm Natalie from next door. Please, if you'd like." I offered her the pie, and the old woman smiled gently. "I'm Dorothy." "Thank you." Her voice was calm, but her eyes looked at me sharply. There was something in her expression, something she wanted to say but didn't put into words. About 2 weeks later, on a Friday night, Ryan came to stay over at my place. Ethan was thrilled. The three of us had dinner and watched a movie. After my son went to his bedroom, Ryan and I spent quiet time in the living room drinking wine. I was happy. I truly felt happy. But the next morning, something felt off. Ethan wasn't himself. He stared blankly at his breakfast cereal, his hand moving the spoon heavily. "What's wrong, Ethan?" When I asked, my son answered in a small voice. I woke up in the middle of the night, and Ryan was in my room. I gasped for a moment. But I quickly calmed myself down. He must have just stopped by to check on Ethan on his way to the bathroom. Knowing how kind he was, he probably just wanted to make sure my son wasn't coming down with a cold. Yes, that must be it. I decided not to think too deeply about it. A week later, on Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Dorothy from next door was standing there. Her expression was different from usual. It was serious, somehow urgent. "Natalie, tonight, at 2 in the morning, bring your son to the second floor of my house." My eyes widened. 2 in the morning. Why such an hour? Why? I asked. Dorothy looked straight into my eyes and said, "You'll understand when you come." That's all she said before she left. I was confused. Going to the neighbor's house at 2 in the morning with my 5-year-old son, it was such a strange request. But something about Dorothy's eyes, that seriousness, that urgency, stuck with me. I didn't know why. But I decided to do what she asked. That night, I wrapped Ethan in a blanket and quietly left the house. 2 in the morning. I stood in front of Dorothy's door, holding Ethan. My son was sleepy, his face buried in my shoulder. Before I could knock, the door opened and Dorothy appeared, as if she'd been waiting for us. "You came," she said quietly and invited us in. We went up the stairs to a bedroom on the second floor. The room was dark, with the curtains only half open. Dorothy stood by the window and signaled to me. Look from here. I approached the window, still holding Ethan. And the moment I looked outside, my breath stopped. A man in a hood was walking slowly around my house. In the dim light of the street lamp, his figure was eerily quiet. The man peered into each window of my house, checked the doorknob, and then went around back. Eventually he stopped and stood still, looking up at Ethan's bedroom window. His movements were careful, calculated. Who is he? My voice was trembling. Dorothy answered with her arms crossed. I don't know. But he's been coming every night for a week. He appears at 2 in the morning and leaves at 3. Precise as clockwork. My mind went blank. A week. Every night. While I'd been sleeping, not knowing anything, this man had been watching my house, watching my son's room. Why didn't you tell me? When I asked, Dorothy answered calmly. The first night I thought it might be coincidence. But then the second night, the third night continued. I wasn't sure you'd believe me if I told you. So I waited until I was certain. The man was still prowling around my house. I couldn't see his face. The hood was pulled down deep, making it impossible to identify him. But there was clear intention in his movements. He was looking for something. Targeting something. We watched from the window until 3 o'clock. The man checked his arm as if looking at a watch, then disappeared into the darkness. My knees felt like they might give out. Ethan was still sleeping in my arms. I have to protect this child. That thought alone kept me standing. The next morning, I immediately called the police. When I explained the situation, the officer on the phone said, I understand your concern, but unless there's trespassing or actual harm, there's limited action we can take. We can increase patrols, though. That was all. I was overcome with a sense of helplessness. Dorothy came by in the early afternoon. She made a suggestion. Let's install security cameras. If we can see his face, the police will have to act. I nodded. I couldn't think of any other option. That afternoon, we installed 3 small security cameras around the house. At the front door, the back door, and positioned to see Ethan's bedroom window. Dorothy worked efficiently, organizing the wiring. My husband was a police officer, so I'm used to this sort of thing. She said it with a smile, but her eyes were serious. We started recording that night. I couldn't sleep. I sat on the living room sofa, staring at the monitor. 2 in the morning. There was movement on the screen. The man appeared. Wearing the same hood as last night, walking slowly around the house in the same way. I stared at the footage, but couldn't see his face. Several days passed. Ethan's behavior became even stranger. He started waking up in the middle of the night, crying suddenly. When I rushed to him, my son clung to me, trembling. What's wrong, Ethan? Did you have a bad dream? When I asked gently, my son shook his head. I can't tell. It's a secret. A secret. That word caught in my mind. A secret with whom? But my son wouldn't say anything more. He just buried his face in my chest and kept crying. I felt like I was being crushed by anxiety. Was Ethan frightened because of that stalker? Or was there another reason? I didn't know. I didn't know anything anymore. That Thursday, Ryan stopped by after work. Seeing my exhausted face, he said worriedly, "Are you okay, Natalie? You haven't been sleeping well lately, have you?" I explained the situation. That there was a stalker. That every night someone was prowling around the house. Ryan listened with a serious expression. "Then I'll stay over tonight. It'll be safer with a man around." That's what he said. I was grateful. "Thank you so much. That really helps." That night, Ryan stayed at my house. While he slept on the living room sofa, I was able to sleep with a little peace of mind for the first time in a while. The next morning, I checked the security camera footage. And I was surprised. Last night, the man hadn't appeared. Maybe he didn't come because Ryan was there. That's what I thought. The perpetrator must be a coward. When he knows there's a man present, he stays away. Over the next few days, I checked all the recorded footage. I desperately searched for any clues, any moment when the man's face might be visible. And I noticed a strange pattern. There were nights when the man appeared, and nights when he didn't. At first it seemed random. But looking more closely, there was something the nights without him had in common. The man only didn't come on nights when Ryan was staying over. Was it coincidence? I tilted my head. But deep in my mind, I felt something wasn't right. I reviewed the footage again and again. I checked a week's worth of recordings on fast forward, tracking the man's movements. And in footage from 3 days ago, I gasped. The moment the man passed under a streetlight, his hood shifted slightly in the wind. It was just an instant, but I could see the outline of his face. I paused the video. I enlarged the screen. It was blurry, but a face was definitely visible. More clearly. I desperately adjusted the contrast. And the moment the image became clear, my heart nearly stopped. I knew that face. Marcus. It was my ex-husband. I couldn't believe it. Why was a man I'd barely been in contact with for 3 years prowling around my house in the middle of the night? My hands trembled. Anger welled up inside me. The stalker was my ex-husband. Even after the divorce, was he still obsessed with me? Or was he trying to take my son? Various thoughts raced through my head. I immediately contacted Dorothy. She came to my house and we reviewed the footage together. No doubt about it, Dorothy said calmly. Your ex-husband. I nodded. Marcus. I haven't seen him since the divorce. Why now? Dorothy said nothing and played the video again. We watched Marcus's movements in silence. He walked slowly around the house, checked the windows, reached for the doorknob but then stopped. Then he went around back and looked up at Ethan's bedroom window. Wait, Dorothy said. Look carefully at his behavior, Natalie. I stared at the screen. Marcus wasn't trying to break into the house. He was touching the doorknob, but not trying to open it. He was looking in the windows, but not trying to break them. He looked like he was checking something. He's keeping watch, Dorothy said quietly. He's not targeting the house. He looks like he's trying to protect it. I shook my head. That can't be. Since the divorce, Marcus has only sent child support. He's hardly ever come to see Ethan. He sends a card on his birthday at most. Why would he need to protect us now? But Dorothy's words stuck with me. Why didn't he come on nights when Ryan was there? That question surfaced again. And Ethan's words came back to me. I woke up in the middle of the night, and Ryan was in my room. I can't tell. It's a secret. No way. A chill ran down my spine. Ryan and Marcus. The two names crossed in my mind. Could it be that Marcus was wary of Ryan? But why? Ryan was kind and good to Ethan. No, wait. Was that really true? I stood up. I'm going to contact Marcus. I have to hear his side. Dorothy nodded. That's good. But be careful. If he really is a dangerous person, you should avoid meeting him directly. By phone first. I took out my smartphone and called Marcus's number for the first time in 3 years. After 3 rings, he answered. Natalie. It was a low, familiar voice. Let me hear your explanation. I got straight to the point. Why are you prowling around my house every night? On the other end of the phone, Marcus let out a long sigh. So you're finally willing to believe me? What are you talking about? I still don't believe you. But explain. Why are you doing this? Marcus said, look into that man. Ryan. No, his real name is Brian Mitchell. I've been keeping watch to protect my son. Ever since you started dating him. I was confused. What are you saying? Ryan's real name is Brian. That can't be. Marcus's voice was serious. Look it up. He has a criminal record. Sexual abuse of children. I had to protect my son. I thought you wouldn't believe me, so I was gathering evidence. My heart pounded violently. That's a lie. Ryan isn't that kind of person. My mother introduced him to me. Ask your mother, Marcus said. How she met him. Why she introduced him to you. Ask her everything. After I hung up, I stood there stunned. Dorothy put her hand on my shoulder. Let's investigate, Natalie. If you don't know the truth, you can't protect your son. That night, at 2 a.m, I went to Dorothy's second floor again with Ethan. Ryan had said he was on a business trip tonight. Which meant Marcus should appear. He's here, Dorothy pointed out the window. The hooded man, Marcus, appeared. He began walking around the house as usual. But tonight, my perspective had changed. He wasn't an intruder. He might be a guardian. Marcus checked the front door and went around back. Then he stopped and stood still, looking up at Ethan's bedroom window. He looked like a worried father. I checked the security camera's live feed on my smartphone. Tonight I wanted to see his face more clearly. Marcus passed under the streetlight. The wind blew, shifting his hood slightly. I stared at the screen. And then the moment came. Marcus looked up. The light from the street lamp illuminated his face. The footage showed the face of an exhausted man. Dark circles under his eyes, hollow cheeks. But in those eyes was strong determination. A father's determination to protect his son. Dorothy said, look at his movements. After circling the house, Marcus hid in the bushes in back. He didn't move from there. As if waiting for something. As if watching to make sure something didn't come. Something or someone. He's not targeting the house, Dorothy repeated. He's protecting the house from something. From Ryan. I felt something crumbling inside me. If what Marcus said was true. If Ryan had been lying. Then I had been putting my son in danger. The next morning, I made up my mind. I had to know the truth. I contacted Marcus again and arranged to meet him in person. At a busy cafe, during the day. Marcus appeared exactly on time. Seeing him for the first time in 3 years, he looked worn out. Please, sit down. When I said that, he quietly sat in the seat across from me. Explain. Everything. When I said that, Marcus took a deep breath. 2 months ago, when I saw Ethan, he told me about him. About this person named Ryan. My son talked about him happily. But something was off. He wouldn't make eye contact. He wasn't energetic. So I got worried and started investigating. Marcus said he asked a police officer friend to look into Ryan's background. And he discovered a horrifying truth. Ryan's real name was Brian Mitchell. 3 years ago, in another state, he'd been arrested for sexually abusing his girlfriend's daughter, a 6-year-old child. I tried to tell you right away. But you said during the divorce never to get involved again. I thought you wouldn't believe me if I told you directly. So I planned to gather evidence and stop him before he did anything. I trembled. Is it really true? Ryan really? Marcus nodded. Go to the police. Talk to a detective who specializes in this. Even if you can't believe my words, believe the evidence. Tears nearly overflowed. If it was true, what had I been doing? Had I been putting my son in danger? After leaving the cafe, I immediately contacted a detective who specialized in sex crimes, Victor Reyes. It was the name Marcus had given me. Detective Reyes listened to my story seriously and promised to start an investigation right away. 3 days later, Detective Reyes contacted me. "Ms. Natalie, please sit down to hear this." The voice on the phone was heavy. I sat in a chair and clenched my hands. My heart was pounding hard. Ryan Thompson, real name Brian Mitchell. 3 years ago, in Portland, Oregon, he was arrested for sexual abuse of his girlfriend's daughter, a 6-year-old girl at the time. He received a suspended sentence and didn't serve time. After that, he changed his name and moved to a different state. I felt nauseous. It was true. Everything Marcus had said was true. What about Ethan? I asked in a trembling voice. "Is my son okay?" Detective Reyes said, "Take him to a specialist immediately. We'll also arrange for a child welfare expert." That same day, I took Ethan to a child psychology specialist. While waiting in the examination room, my hands kept trembling. An hour later, the specialist came out. Fortunately, we found no evidence of direct physical abuse. But there was definitely psychological grooming. The specialist explained gently. Ethan said that Ryan would come to his room in the middle of the night and repeatedly tell him, "This is our secret." It's a typical grooming technique. Grooming. Hearing that word, my knees nearly gave out. If I'd been just a little later. If Marcus hadn't been keeping watch. A few days later, I met with Marcus. This time I bowed my head to him. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. You were trying to protect our son, and I." Marcus shook his head. "You don't need to apologize. I should have told you directly sooner. But during the divorce, you said never to get involved again. I couldn't blame you for thinking I was a stalker. How did you find out about Ryan?" When I asked, Marcus answered. 2 months ago, when I saw Ethan. My son told me about Ryan. But something seemed off. He talked about him happily, but his eyes weren't smiling. So I asked my police officer friend to look into his background. And a criminal record came up. Marcus said he'd been watching my house ever since. To catch evidence and stop Ryan before he did anything. But thinking I wouldn't believe him if he told me directly, he just focused on protecting our son. I thought I was already a failure as a father. After the divorce, all I could do was pay child support. But protecting my son, that's something I could never give up on. There were tears in Marcus's eyes. At the end of that week, Detective Reyes brought new information. He faced me with a grave expression. "Ms. Natalie, Brian Mitchell was a repeat offender. Over the past 10 years, he's abused at least 3 children. All of them children of single mothers. He deliberately targeted single mothers." I was speechless. 3 children. Ryan, no, Brian, had hurt multiple children. Furthermore, Detective Reyes continued, "And there's one more thing I have to tell you. We examined your mother's bank account. There was a deposit of $5,000 from Brian." What? I couldn't believe my ears. In my mother's account? From Ryan? The timing was 1 week before you met Brian. Detective Reyes's words pierced my heart. I immediately went to my mother's house. When she opened the door and saw my face, she seemed to realize something. "You knew," I shouted. "You knew who Ryan was." My mother looked away. "Natalie, calm down." "How can I calm down? You took money. You sold your daughter and grandson." My mother fell silent. That silence said everything. Eventually my mother said in a small voice, life was hard. I thought he was a good man. A good man? I laughed. A good man abuses children. A good man pays a mother money to get close to her child. My mother continued making excuses. I didn't know that he had such a past. That's a lie, I shouted. $5,000. Why would you receive such a large sum just for making an introduction? You must have known. My mother started crying. But I couldn't feel sympathy. This person was my mother. But she'd put her grandson in danger for money. I couldn't forgive that. I immediately reported to Detective Reyes. The detective said, "Your mother will also be subject to investigation. She could be charged with endangering a minor." I nodded. That's fine. Even if she's my mother, I can't forgive this. Several weeks later, Brian Mitchell was arrested. The charges were trespassing, stalking, attempted contact with a child, and 3 counts from his past. In court, Brian looked at me and smiled. That smile sent a chill down my spine. He had no remorse at all. The judge read the sentence. 15 years in prison, no parole. Permanent registration on the sex offender list. Brian said at the end, "I only loved the children. I didn't do anything wrong." I stood up, looked at him, and said, "What you did wasn't love. It was a crime. And you'll never be able to get near children again." As I left the courtroom, Marcus was waiting. He said nothing, just put his arm around my shoulders. For the first time in 3 years, I cried on my ex-husband's chest. My mother was also charged as an accomplice and received a suspended sentence. After the trial, my mother tried to apologize to me. But I turned my back. It was for the money. My mother made excuses to the end. Life was hard. Without turning around, I said, "Ethan and I are no longer your daughter and grandson. Don't ever contact us again." Those were the last words I said to my mother. When I got home, Dorothy was waiting with tea. She said nothing, just sat next to me. I rested my head on Dorothy's shoulder and cried quietly. "It's okay, Natalie," Dorothy said gently. "You're not to blame. They're professionals at deception. What's important is that you were able to protect your son. And that you found out who the truly important people are." I nodded. Marcus had continued to protect our son even when I wouldn't believe him. Dorothy had protected us too. I finally understood. 6 months have passed since then. Ethan receives therapy with a child psychology specialist twice a week. At first he was plagued by nightmares, but gradually his smile has returned. And now he truly enjoys his time with Marcus. Marcus has started coming to see Ethan every weekend. At first it was just for a few hours, but now they often spend the whole weekend together. We decided to raise our son together with joint custody. We got divorced, but he's still an important father to our son. There was no longer any reason to deny that. Dorothy has become an indispensable part of our lives. Having lunch at her house every Sunday afternoon has become a habit. Today too, the sweet smell of Dorothy's apple pie fills the air. My husband was a police officer, so I can spot suspicious people right away, Dorothy laughed as she poured tea. From the first time that man came to your house, I felt something was off. His eyes weren't smiling. "If it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have noticed anything," I said from my heart. "Thank you so much." Dorothy smiled gently. That's what neighbors do. We support each other. I've continued counseling myself. Facing the feelings of self-blame hasn't been easy. But my counselor told me, "You are a victim. They are professionals at deception. And you were able to protect your son. Brian Mitchell is in prison. I heard that as a sex offender, he receives the lowest treatment even within the prison. 15 years, no parole. And after his release, he'll be monitored forever. My mother is on probation. Isolated from the community, living alone. She's sent several apology letters, but I've returned them all unopened. I cannot forgive her. Not even if she's my blood mother. Sunday afternoon. In my backyard, Ethan and Marcus are playing catch. My son's laughter rings out, and Marcus is smiling happily too. I watch that scene from the kitchen window. Dorothy comes over next to me and looks outside together. It's a good sight, she says quietly. I nod. He was trying to protect our son all along. I just didn't believe him. Dorothy says, holding her teacup, real family isn't about blood ties. It's about people who try to protect you even when you don't believe them. And a relationship where you can say thank you when you realize it. Those words sink deep into my heart. Mom, look. Ethan runs over. I played catch with Dad. I got really good. I hug my son. I was watching, Ethan. You were really good. Marcus approaches and says, a little shyly, can I come again next week? I smile. Of course. Come every week. Ethan will be waiting. Marcus nods and gently pats my son's head. Even after the divorce, he was our son's father. Even when misunderstood, even when thought of as a stalker, he never stopped protecting our son. That's what real family is, I finally understood. At dusk, orange light illuminates the yard. Ethan, Marcus, Dorothy, and me. Blood ties alone don't make a family. Believing in each other, protecting each other, supporting each other, that's what real family is. I stand by the window, burning this peaceful scene into my memory. The long nightmare is over. And new days are about to begin. With Ethan's laughter echoing around me, I smile quietly. We're going to be okay. Because real family is right here beside us.